in my opinion, because of cards like Banishing Light, Detention Sphere, and Abrupt Decay being so ubiquitous. But if there's any matchup in the format where this card's going to be good, it's probably against John Monsters. 5 toughness is the threshold where a lot of the removal doesn't work anymore, most notably Mizium Mortars, and flying is really good against a deck that's so good at blocking like John Monsters. So it's going to be good. It's going to be good here.
All right, and we are underway. Chris VanMeter, your number 2 seed over on the left side. He is on the play, starts out with an Overgrown Tomb into Elvish Mystic, and quickly finds out what his opponent's on as Swamp into Rakdos Cackler is the first play for Giurato.
And Chris with a very, very land-heavy hand. In fact, I believe his hand is nothing but lands.
So it's just Mystic and lands. It's an aggressive start for sure.
It's got a fair number of scry lands, but it's and the hand is certainly Thoughtseize proof if that's something he's concerned about, but very light on action right now, obviously.
Right, so right now deciding how he wants to scry. Certainly, I would say, yeah, Giurato's turn 1 play lets Chris know most everything he needs to know about the matchup.
And if there's any sort of style of deck that's going to punish Chris for keeping a hand like this, it's going to be a deck like Mono Black Aggro.
Yeah, certainly. Chris ships the card to the bottom. My guess is so it was a non-land card, but not a particularly great non-land card.
And to speak of the depth that Mono Black has in terms of aggressive creatures, Seth is playing 2 different 2-drops. My list is also playing 2 different 2-drops, and we are playing entirely different 2-drops.
Yeah. Seth is on Thrillkill Assassin and Brain Maggot. You'd be on, I assume, Pain Seer and
Spiteful Returned.
Spiteful Returned. That's not to say anything of Shred Freak, which is also a mono black card.
Correct. Another card you have access to. I'm a big fan of Mogus's Marauder. I play 4 in my list, Seth with only 1. And a lot of the creature selection is informed by the presence of Mogus's Marauder.
Sure. Tormented Hero, the turn 2 play from Giurato. He also makes a Mutavault, and he crashes for 2. That puts VanMeter down to 16. And VanMeter will make Scavenging Ooze. One of the things about mono black, correct me if I'm wrong here, is the creatures really all hinge around the number 2. You have a lot of 2/1s, a lot of 2/2s. If your opponent can make a 3/3, it can be problematic to swing through. Scavenging Ooze has that potential, but isn't there yet. It's only a 2/2 at the moment.
It's one of the reasons that I really like Mogus's Marauder in this kind of list, is it's really easy for your opponent to just play a blocker that's big enough that you can't get through. Now, your various Doomblade, Hero's Downfall, Ultimate Price type effects can handle that to some extent, but you can only play so many of those cards, and they don't always line up the right way. You don't have access to Firefist Striker or Rubble Maka the ways that Mono Red can push through blockers, so 3/3s and 4/4s are problematic.
Yeah, we were saying earlier that one of the cards that's difficult for Mono Black Aggro is a card like Night Veil Spectre can be very tough to swing through.
Oh yeah, I mean, can't Doomblade it, can't Ultimate Price it, and
can't attack it.
Can't attack through it. It's really hard to beat.
All right, Giurato is going to go ahead and just swing Cackler. That's a nod there to Scavenging Ooze. He doesn't want to trade the Tormented Hero with the Elvish Mystic because Ooze would get too big. So Ooze doing its job, even though it's unlikely VanMeter's going to block here.
Correct. It's the same reason I play Boon of Erebos in my list too. It's just really hard to beat big creatures.
And actually, interesting play here. Tell me what you think about this. VanMeter opts to chump block the Rakdos Cackler with the intention of just eating it with Scavenging Ooze. And we see, as you mentioned, the hand is Thoughtseize proof. Giurato goes for Thoughtseize and sees Mutavault and 3 lands, none of which are scry lands.
I don't mind this play at all from Chris. He's got more than enough mana to work with, and a 3/3, again, very powerful against Mono Black Aggro. They just don't have a lot of ways to attack through it. You're looking at a removal spell, Herald of Torment, or Mogus's Marauder. Otherwise, that 3/3 is just a moat.
Yeah. Now, Chris, what I find interesting, Chris is like rookie to this deck and opted on the play to keep a hand of Overgrown Tomb, Elvish Mystic, 5 more lands, 2 of which were scry lands. Like, he values Elvish Mystic. That shows like a really high value for Elvish Mystic.
Yeah, and also he had a Mutavault and 2 scry lands amongst his lands. So those cards in conjunction with one another sort of represent having another spell. They represent more action. And in a Thoughtseize format, just mulliganing is so rough.
You see there, VanMeter does eat his Elvish Mystic main phase, and he goes on the aggressive side, sensing that Giurato only has 2 lands. Scavenging Ooze crashes in for 3. And Chris VanMeter makes an Elvish Mystic and leaves up a Mutavault activation on the defensive side of things. And 3rd land does show up for Giurato, and now he has a lot of options. He has Mogus's Marauder, he has Herald of Torment, he has Master of the Feast, all available to him.
Yeah, and 3 mana is a really important flashpoint for Mono Black Aggro. because of cards like Hero's Downfall and all of your very powerful 3-drops.
How do you feel about Master of the Feast here? That's a card that to me is really interesting. You know, if you have it, when do you play it? Like, do you drop it as soon as possible? Do you not want to play it? You know, Chris's hand's pretty weak. I don't really want to draw him into gas, but I also want to get his life total. You know, there's a lot going on here.
This is a really good spot, I think, for Master of the Feast. If it's in your deck, you're playing against an opponent who's Jund Monster is one of the better matchups that you can have this card in, and an opponent who also can't kill it. It's not getting a whole lot better than this.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he does. Casts Master of the Feast. Does not attack. Does not want to trade Cackler for Mutavault. I would actually be... Well, I guess if he makes that trade, he's worried about Ooze getting too big.
I can respect not wanting to trade here. Also, Seth has his 1 main deck copy of Mogus' Marauder in hand, so he's happy to let the board build up a little bit and try to win the game that way.
Yeah, all he needs to do, I guess, is get 1 or 2 Master hits across, and that Mogus' Marauder should be lethal.
That is the upside. It does not take long for Master of the Feast to kill someone.
If you look at him there, the big demon over on the left, 5/5 flyer for 3 with a little bit of a drawback.
Well, in this spot, 5 damage is definitely worth giving Chris a card here. So as long as it's not one of Chris's 2 main deck copies of Abrupt Decay, I'm sure Seth will be thrilled.
I'll tell you, the last time I played that card, I tried drafting it. I played it on turn 3, and then it got sudden stormed, and then I resolved to not draft it again.
It's one of those cards where the games you win with it are going to feel pretty harrowing, and the games you lose are definitely going to stand out.
Right, they'll pin it to the earth, and you'll hate that you've ever played the card. But it certainly is powerful. It is a ton of damage.
So, yep, just confirming here that we get a trigger.
And Chris draws yet another land. He did have that Ooze that he made, but his hand is still all lands.
And Master of Feast is going to get to do its thing this game, it feels like.
So we'll see here. Land number 4 for Giurato. Yeah, he wants to engineer a board where he can win next turn. That would be the goal.
And I believe he has the tools to do it. For example, if he goes ahead and plays, if he bestows Gnarled Scarhide this turn,
on Master of the Feast.
that's 7. And then next turn, assuming that nothing happens to Master of the Feast, then Mogus' Marauder definitely wins the game.
Right. Now, at the same time, I think just playing Herald of Torment does the same thing, and maybe that gives him some blocking options. Maybe 5. And then, yeah, the Mogus' Marauder would still be lethal.
Oh, he can also just Mogus' Marauder this turn and attack for a bunch. This is also acceptable. And even if something bad happens to that Master Feast next turn, with the Herald of Torment in Seth's hand, he has the option to give something flying and maybe end the game that way.
So this is a swing for 13 right now. That'll drop VanMeter down to 4 life. And you see he has no removal in hand, no black creatures. He's going to take all of it.
He's taken the whole shebang. And with the Master Feast in play, even a top deck Mizium Mortars does not get Chris out of this.
I guess that's one thing I like about Giurato's choice of play here is he wants to get in his damage before he draws VanMeter even more extra cards. You know, this minimizes the chance that he drew VanMeter into an answer to what's going on.
Yeah, a solitary removal spell doesn't do anything for Chris. And creatures don't really help that much. Basically, he's jammed up because any answer that he has to Master Feast doesn't really doesn't answer the plethora of creatures that Seth has in play, and any answers to the 2/1s that Seth has access to doesn't answer Master of the Feast. So he kind of has it covered both ways.
Yeah. So say for example, Seth had gone the other route where he just swung Master that turn, and then VanMeter had off his extra card drawn Mizium Mortars. So Giurato could be in a pretty difficult spot here.
Yes.
And this really cleverly plays around it. And another land for VanMeter. That's going to be no help. Is there a card that VanMeter can draw on Giurato's turn that gets him out of this?
Abrupt Decay kills the Master, and then you at least give the option for Seth to mess up in combat.
Yeah, Seth only would have 5 attackers, and VanMeter would have 4 blockers, so he actually would be able to survive if that card he draws is Abrupt Decay.
And he gets to gain life off the Scavenging Ooze and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, so there's game for him. He's going to play an untapped green source to maximize Scavenging Ooze.
Now all of this fails if Seth finds the 5th land, because then Herald of Torment goes on one of his creatures in play, and there's no way for Chris to answer both.
All right, upkeep. VanMeter will draw a card. Is it Abrupt Decay? It is. I don't believe it is.
Is it another,
it's another Scavenging? These draws for VanMeter. VanMeter. He's punished a little bit by this land-heavy hand. He just kept drawing more.
Well, the third Scavenging Ooze is pretty insulting when you're looking for some action.
Yeah, I mean, Ooze is actually very good in this matchup is the thing. The first one's so good that I would even be happy drawing a second.
Yeah.
But the third is just not fun.
So now Seth has to at least think about what happens if Chris found a way to kill this Master. What happens to me inside of combat if I attack with everything?
I mean, yeah, it certainly is an interesting question. I don't think it's the way that Giurato messes it up. The main reason is that I can't see a situation where he doesn't swing Master of the Feast, and the moment he swings Master of the Feast, he wins. Because as we know, VanMeter doesn't have an answer. Yep, and that'll do it. Game 1 goes over to Seth Giurato, and now he's up a game on Chris VanMeter.
This is, again, the type of matchup where if Master of Feast is going to be good, it's going to be good here. I think in the post-board games, it's likely to get worse, but it was excellent in that first game.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and first look at, the aggro deck sideboard. That's where I would start at. This is Seth Giurato's sideboard. One you're familiar with. Pretty much any black deck that has access to Doomblade, I have to assume boards in Doomblades against monsters.
Doomblade's about as good as it gets here. I have a bunch of them in my sideboard as well. Then, of course, just excellent against the Palicranos Stormbreath Dragon deck. He has a Bile-Blight, a Bray Maggot, 4th copy of Hero's Downfall, 2 Mogus's Marauders, 3 Dark Betrayal, and 4 copies of Duress. I'm curious to see what he wants to do with the Mogus's Marauder here. In the abstract, it's very good. Chris's deck is good at blocking. But if he's sideboarding to anything post-board, it's likely to be more removal spells. So what you saw in that first game, when the board kind of gets gummed up a little bit, and then Mogus's Marauder is a huge swing, a little less likely to happen in the post-board games. But I think he's going to want to hit the Hero's Downfall, and the 3 copies of Doomblade are certainly coming in.
Yeah, what do you board out for those in this deck? Right now, in his main deck, his permission is 4 Thoughtseize, 3 Price, 3 Downfall. Are you upgrading your removal spells, or are you just adding removal?
I think that I would probably remove Thoughtseize in this matchup. In a matchup where your opponent has creatures you care about and removal spells that you care about, Thoughtseize is pretty poor in mono black aggro, I feel like, because you care about everything. It's a little bit different. Esper gets to ignore a large swath of cards, and mono black Devotion gets to ignore a large swath of cards. Your opponent's already playing with mulligans in most games, and then your Thoughtseizes amplify that by taking their best card. With mono black aggro, you care about everything they're up to. Every 2/4 matters, every removal spell matters. And the mana is a big cost too, because you're trying to flood the board with a lot of cheap stuff. So paying a mana is actually a fairly large cost in this deck. So that's the first card that I would remove here. And then probably Master of the Feast as the second card, even though it was good in that game, because you're likely to be playing against a lot more creature removal post-board. But I would definitely start with Thoughtseize.
All right. Well, on VanMeter's side, you have to assume the removal count's going up. But in what way is it doing it?
3 copies of Mistcutter Hydra, 3 Nylea's Disciples, 2 Petrify, Amizia Mortars, 2 Rakdos Return, 2 Golgari Charm, a Doomblade, and a Vraska the Unseen. Golgari Charm is awesome in this matchup. There's a lot of one-toughness creatures in mono black aggro, and Herald of Torment and Master of the Feast. So there's no end of targets. It's either going to be a sweeper or a removal spell for Seth's best threat. So Golgari Charm is an A+ in this matchup. The Mizia Mortars and the 2 copies of Putrefy is well very good here, and I think Nylea's Disciple is reasonable as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Nylea's Disciples, whether or not, if this is a life gain sort of matchup or just positional play.
It's a little bit of both, but the fact that 3/3 is the watermark for this is a very good blocker means that Nylea's Disciple is good in the matchup. If Nylea's Disciple was, let's say it was a 2/2 for 3 mana, I think it would not be brought in this matchup, even though it would still be good against decks like Mono Red.
Sure.
But a 3/3 is just the flashpoint where it requires a removal spell or a bestow or some effort from Seth to start attacking with his creatures again.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. So post-board, I know that you were saying that this is one of the better matchups. You said pre-board, it sounded like you said this is one of the better matchups for a mono black aggro deck.
Not necessarily for a mono black aggro deck, but for if you have Master of the Feast in your build, this is where you get paid off for it. Against decks like Esper or Blue-White, you're just going to get hit with a Detention Sphere or a Banishing Light or an Elspeth a large percentage of the time. And there's some matchups where it's a little too slow to the table. Some matchups where your opponent has main deck enchantment removal that Master gets caught in the crosshairs of. But Jump Monsters, 5 toughness is the critical flashpoint. Flying is really valuable, and it's a really quick clock. Chris in the main deck only has 2 copies of Abrupt Decay, 2 copies of Dreadbore, and Dreadbore means that either Chris is taking 5 or he's not drawing a card, or something like Palicranos alongside Domri. There's not a lot of outs to it game 1, so It's not a card that I'm a big fan of, but if I knew that I was playing against Jund monsters all day long, I would definitely want Master of the Feast.
Sure. I don't know, this seems like a matchup which actually, I would say, if not pre-board, certainly post-board, I think it favors VanMeter's side. Like, generally, what these mid-range aggro decks, I like that they're one step bigger than the small aggro decks. Cards like Scavenging Ooze or Courser of Krufix seem like they should line up decently well against the mono black deck.
That is true, but less so the case than against a deck like mono red, because just Doomblades and Ultimate Prices are really good against you. There's draws that Jund Monster has against mono red, for example, where they accelerate into Palakranos, and that's just game over a huge portion of the time when you play against mono red.
Right.
Against mono black, that draw might not be worth very much.
They can Doomblade it.
Yeah, they can just Doomblade it. So some of the threats and some of the answers are a little bit different. Now, that said, the mono black deck is a little less resilient to removal spells. It goes higher up the curve, so it's more susceptible to missing land drops. There's other vulnerabilities that it gets in the matchup. You lose Fire Fist Striker, which is good in percentage of games. So there are costs being played, but a lot of the Jund Monsters hands that typically just beat an aggressive deck, the fast Palakranos draws, sometimes they're good against mono black aggro, but often they're pretty bad.
Yeah. So we are underway now for game 2. Chris VanMeter on the play once again. We'll see. Last time he kept an Elvish Mystic 6-land hand based on the power of Scrylands, and he really flooded out with that hand, which, I think is one of the dangers that is present in keeping that hand, one that I'm sure VanMeter accepted when he kept it. This one may have the opposite problem.
I think 2 Scrylands, Elvish Mystic, Mutavault against an unknown opponent is a fine 7-card hand to keep on the play. I think post-board he knows that type of hand's not going to get it done.
Absolutely. We see here deciding on mulligans. Looks like VanMeter has a pair of lands, but it doesn't have much early game. It's liable to get run over.
Yeah, he has an opening hand where it looks like his first play of the game would be a turn 3 Domri.
Right. Gonna keep it. Some of his lands are scry lands here, and it looks like his late game is fairly strong. So we'll see what he goes with here. I'm going to start on Temple of Abandon. And Jund, one of those decks that was really helped out by the completion of the Scryland of the Temple cycle. Especially these decks where you need to hit 5 lands, but land 6 is really not very useful to you.
Sure.
Scrylands are just excellent in those kind of archetypes.
Yeah, for sure. Although Chris is not actually playing any copies of Temple of Malady. He's, I think, played 1 sometimes and usually 0. But overall, these mana bases are definitely facilitated by having access to just a better bridge of Scrylands.
Yeah, well, VanMeter starts out on a pair of Scrylands while Giurato starts out on a Gnarled Scarhide. He does have his 2-power 1-drop, but on turn 2 he has no plays other than a Mutavault.
But the Mutavault is still reasonable here insofar as it keeps Chris off of casting his Domri, unless he's willing to just lose it to combat next turn.
Sure, we see it looks like a pair of Polukranos in VanMeter's hand. He's going to go ahead and shock for Blood Crypt, just so he can play Domri. Interestingly, VanMeter had a Temple he could have made that turn, but he opted to shock for Domri instead.
Well, the mono black aggro deck has so many powerful 3-mana creatures, and Seth not playing anything last turn implies there's a reasonable chance he has a good 3. So at least force Seth to make the decision of take a turn off of developing your board and playing one of your powerful 3s if you want to get this Domri off the table.
Sure, so he's just trying to discarding a card to buy a turn.
Yeah, because the 3rd turn is such a critical flashpoint for Seth.
You can see that, and now Seth's going to have to make that decision. And I would almost want to say he has to kill the Domri. If not, he's running the risk that VanMeter will make Polukranos and then tell Polukranos to fight something.
I think that he can only ignore this Domri if his plan is to play Master of the Feast, because he is just opening himself up to so many powerful openings from Chris.
Yeah, and no Master of the Feast. It is an attack for 4, and Chris VanMeter did buy himself the turn. It was the cost of 1 card and 2 life. And also at the cost of a turn 4 Polukranos, as he doesn't have that now. His 4th land is Temple of Abandon.
But I don't mind Chris de-emphasizing the speed a little bit here, because the odds that Palakranos is very good against the opponent who did nothing on turn 2, their mono black deck post sideboard, is just pretty low.
You're thinking it's going to hit a Doomblade of some sort.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Giurato's turn 4 is to bestow Gnarled Scarhide on Gnarled Scarhide, so now it's a 4-2 can't block. And we'll see if there's a response.
Looks like Chris has picked up Golgari Charm the last turn, so
Yeah.
he has a couple options here.
He scryed a Putrefy to the top as well, so he's really on that all removal plan. And he's going to Golgari Charm to blow up the... He's going to wait till it's bestowed, and he's going to blow up the Gnarled Scarhide with the Destroy an Enchantment mode of Golgari Charm.
And that turn does represent a small win for Seth. Golgari Charm is so good against mono black aggro that trading it that innocuously is a big win.
Chris does play the Pelucranos, and as you said, there is waiting in the wings a Doomblade with his name on it.
Not too surprising.
No, Chris expects this. Be interesting to see how much Seth commits here. He has a Tormented Hero in his hand. He has the opportunity to swing Mutavault here. How much damage does he want to push? Chris is already down to 12, and it's just 2. He wants, rather than pushing damage, he's going to push board presence. So we see Thrillkill Assassin unleashed and Tormented Hero added to Giurato's side.
Yeah, he's got to unleash the clowns here.
Well, if you're VanMeter, I'm particularly worried about Activate Mutavault Mogus's Marauders.
Yeah.
And now we know that Seth Giurato only has 1 Mogus in his deck, maybe 3 after board, but VanMeter doesn't know that. And certainly that would be a play that would be on my mind on his side.
But the problem is, can you win this game by, what's Chris play here otherwise? It's just play Putrefy on something, get hit for 6.
Right. I mean, I'm not sure he has another line. It's just,
Sure.
It's, Chris realizes that he's dead to plays like that.
Yeah, and I like this play from Chris instead of casting the removal spell. This is the highest upside play because if there's a removal spell left over in Seth's hand, you're pretty unlikely to win regardless. And if his hand is somehow empty, then this is a really good shot.
He goes for another Hero's Downfall. And I want to say that the card hanging out in Giurato's hand is a Bioblight.
Bioblight, a little curious. There's 1 copy in the sideboard. It is going to do some okay work here.
He's going to 2 for 1 himself to kill the Pelucranos.
It's not shabby. I mean,
Right.
Obviously, if this was at Doomblade or Ultimate Price, it's much better here for Seth. But this is, as far as Bioblight in the matchup, this is about as good as it's going to get.
All right, so life totals are correct here. Chris actually still at 14. Giurato is at 20. So Giurato still has a little bit farther to go. He's pushing 6 damage here at the cost of a 2 for 1. And actually at 14, I somewhat like VanMeter's board.
He's got a lot of power to work with. There's, of course, a bunch of dangerous draws in Seth's deck at this point, especially Mogus's Marauder. But, Chris has some tools to work with here.
Right. Mogus's Marauder is scary. Herald of Torment is pretty scary right now. There's a lot of things on 5 mana that Giurato can do. And is a Bioblade on Pelucranos, so it'll be a 2 for 1 trade here. Pelucranos. So Pelucranos goes ahead and trades away with... goes ahead and... Yeah, Pelucranos goes ahead and trades away there, and Giurato's going to go ahead and push 6 damage through, so he still has a Hero, Gnarled Scarhide, and Thrillkill Assassin. And we'll see, putting VanMeter down to 8, and now we'll see what VanMeter's response is. He does have a Putrefy in hand, as well as a pair of red cards, I believe Storm Breaths.
Yeah, the issue here for Chris is he knows that Seth doesn't have a removal spell left over in his hand, or almost certainly doesn't. But if he just plays his 1 Storm Breath Dragon this turn, if nothing else, Seth has the attack with Thrillkill Assassin. Is Chris willing to trade in this spot?
Right, Seth gets to push at least 2 free damage. And a lot of Seth's draws are very live here. And exactly what you said, just the Thrillkill Assassin pushes through. Is Chris willing to make the trade? I almost feel like he has to.
Yeah, if he's not willing to block here, then Mogus's Marauder is definitely lethal if it comes up at any point. I know it's an ugly-looking trade. You're trading your Stormbreath Dragon for a Thrillkill Assassin, but taking these 2 points here is very risky.
Yep, I think you do, and he does go ahead and do it. And Giurato's going to replace Thrillkill with another Tormented Hero and pass back the turn. So no, Chris prevented taking any damage that turn, but he didn't really make any progress on the board.
Oh,
but that
boy.
draw was a little huge.
Oh, boy.
Miracles, Amizium Mortars. Up until that turn, I was going to say, I thought that Giurato was going to get this game. I no longer think that.
Yeah, it was
That
harrowing,
huge.
but now the game has swung.
Yeah, Storm Breath swings in for 4. First damage, Giurato drops from 20 down to 16, and he draws more lands. 2 swamps, his whole hand. That's swamps number 7 and 8. Far too many for his 22 land deck.
Yeah, the mono black aggro list does have some hedging against flooding out here with all the bestow creatures, but not in this spot.
Yeah, VanMeter representing, I believe, a 2-turn clock if he monsters that Storm Breath Dragon. He's going to go with the safe play. Rather than a 2-turn clock, he's going to go for the 3-turn clock. He's going to make Domri Rod, leave up Putrefy. Plus it misses, but no, does not matter. Giurato goes down to 12.
And leaving up the Putrefy gives him a lot of insurance against really any draw that Seth could have on the way back.
Yep, Giurato with another draw that does not help him. Domri pluses. This time it reveals Scavenging Ooze. That'll let Chris pad his own life total while continuing to chip away for 4. Giurato drops down to 8. And 2 turns remain. Scavenging Ooze joins the battlefield. And finally, a Mutavault for Giurato. Still no creatures. And looks like we're going to be moving to a 3rd game here.
Yeah, really hard to imagine any rally in the cards here.
Yeah, so that top deck Mizium Mortars really did help Chris out of a jam there. It's one thing is that's I believe the only sweeper he has is he doesn't have access to Anger of the Gods in his sideboard.
Given the extent to which Seth flooded out, I think that the Putrefy and the Storm Breath might have been enough by itself, but that Mortars was, of course, excellent. The delivery guy just called out.
All right, so finishing up the game, we're going to have right now Giurato trying to make some blocks profitable. He doesn't want to die here. He goes ahead and blocks with Mutavault, but it's going to be lethal anyway. Scoops it, and we are on to game 3 between Chris VanMeter and Seth Giurato. Game 1 went Seth's way after Chris kept a land-heavy hand and flooded out. Game 2, Seth was ahead for most of the game, put Chris on his back foot. Chris, with a timely Mizium Mortars, was able to draw his way back into the game and really just 180 the game, turn it around, and take it, now forcing a decisive game 3.
Mizium Mortars still getting it done, and that's a big threat that Seth has to deal with in these post-board games. Only one in Chris's main deck, second one on the sideboard, but it's all about supplementing Chris's other removal spells that bridge the gap for him to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. And that was interesting. So, like, Storm Breath Dragon became a removal spell there. You know, it was a 5-mana sorcery speed kill spell for Thrill Kill Assassin. And a lot of his creatures were kind of we're just becoming really bad 1-for-1 trades. You know, Pelucranos with Doomblade, Storm Breath with Thrill Kill. It was kind of just buying time until he could Mortars the team.
Well, he has a lot of productive draws from there. Mortar is, of course, the most dramatic, but any large creature helps stabilize the ground a little bit. Even Scavenging Ooze there is an enormous draw, so it's tough to sideboard with mono black aggro in this kind of matchup because you need to balance the need to apply pressure with also keeping enough removal and reactive cards in your hand to handle all the things that Jund Monsters brings to the table, because any one of their large threats is capable of winning the game on its own.
Right, so you can't, it's like, it seems to me once you let up on the pressure, like if there's ever a turn where you're not attacking as mono black aggro, it seems like you're on the road to losing here. Like you said, if you give them time with any of their cards, you know, Scavenging Ooze will take over a game, as we saw. Pelucranos can take over a game. Mizium Mortars can take over a game. I'm not sure if Storm Breath takes over a game as much, but it probably still can.
It's sort of incidental. Once you're at a point where Storm Breath Dragon is winning the game, there's a lot of other cards that could have usually won the game. It's more indicative of what has happened leading up to that point, where you're out of removal, you don't have Mogus's Marauder, you don't have the ability to bestow a Herald Torment onto something to force a trade. Any of the cards can kind of win the game on their own if they go unchecked. So it's just an issue of, can VanMeter stabilize the early beats enough where any one of his large creatures or overloaded Mizium Mortars can take over from there.
Yeah. Now, one thing I want to talk about with the sideboarding from Giurato's side is we haven't seen a Brain Maggot yet post-board or even pre-board. You said you didn't really like Thought Season's matchup. Does your opinion change with a card like Brain Maggot?
No, I think Brain Maggot's also really poor. I mean, it trades with Elvish Mystic if the game goes on for a long time. Of course, can't attack through Sylvan Caryatid. Matches up really poorly against Domri and Pelucranos and Golgari Charm. It's not very good in this kind of matchup. I think your one-toughness creatures, there's just a bullseye on them post-board. Most of them die. They get swept away by Palakranos, easily killed by Domri, and Golgari Charm is another concern after sideboard. So they all, as much as possible, you want to de-emphasize that. You saw that Seth in that game still had Gnarled Scarhide in his deck and Tormenta Hero. Those cards are okay, and they're something of a necessary evil because you need to get the early pressure going. But other one-toughness creatures that don't have high upside just need to get out of the deck, and Brain Maggot's at the top of the list.
Yeah, well, the way you'd pointed out in the last game, there was a turn where Giurato bestowed Gnarled Scarhide on a Gnarled Scarhide, VanMeter, Golgari charmed the Scarhide, and you, like from the mono black side, seemed actively happy about that play. You're like, wow, it was only a 1-for-1. That's great.
Golgari Charm is a nightmare. Well, it's not only just a 1-for-1, but it wasn't it was a 1-for-1 not on a critical piece of the puzzle. Because the time where you're not getting swept away, you're often losing something like Herald of Torment or Master Feast, one of your high-impact, high-power cards in the matchup. Right. So getting to trade it with a Gnarled Scarhide is a huge victory.
Yes, we are on to game 3, as you see here, between VanMeter and Giurato. Both players at 5-0. We are a 10-round tournament here in Somerset, New Jersey, and a very large 10-round, pushing on 11. What that means is that players will need to almost certainly start 8-0 or go a full 9-1 to make top 8.
Yeah, X1-1 is going to be a struggle. Maybe there'll be some on the fringes, but it's not going to be a comfortable 8-1 and then get my draw.
Absolutely not. So this game is the first one we've had with Giurato on the play. We do see Mogus's Marauder in his hand, but he's going to have a 1-drop, as the deck's prone to do. This time it is Rakdos Cackler.
And that's the big change. You know, what made this deck viable in my mind? It picked up a lot of pieces, but just having another 1-drop in Gnarled Scarhide, supplementing Rakdos Cackler and Tormented Hero. Now it has the consistency to play a 1-drop most games on turn 1, the type of consistency that Mono Red gets with Foundry Denizen, Fire Drinker Satyr, and Rakdos Cackler.
Yeah, it has access to triple 1-drop draws. As we see here, this is the second time in a row Giurato had a 1-drop on turn 1 and no plays on turn 2. And last time you read this for Doomblade, I have to assume that's still the read.
It often means removal. There's also just not a lot of 2-drops in the deck, especially if Giurato has gotten away from Brain Maggot. He's, at that point, really only got Thrill Kill.
And we see Sylvan Caryatid was the turn 2 play for VanMeter. That card pretty effective in this matchup. Not going to be effective this turn as Giurato makes a Mogus's Marauder and crashes in for 4. But 0-3 Hexproof Wall actually seems really well positioned.
It's tough to attack through. This is, part of the reason I play Boon of Erebos in my list is the Courser of Crufid Sylvan Caryatid decks.
You have to bull rush your way through.
Yep.
We see there, speaking of those cards, Courser of Crufix in VanMeter's hand alongside a Dreadbore. So he has more walls, he has cheap removal. This seems like the kind of things he needs in the matchup.
VanMeter's got the right mix of stuff going right now.
It might even be, I believe, a pair, or at least one Dreadbore. I believe it may be a second.
The question right now is, does Chris feel that he needs to use a removal spell this turn? Or can he afford to play Courser and try to hit something? Yep. If he plays Courser, he knows he's likely playing into the maws of a removal spell. And since he has to tap his Caryatid to do this, it means he takes 4 on the chin if he misses.
Right, and he did miss there, but he does have the Temple in play. He has Temple and Blood Crypt, so he has to decide whether he wants to scry this away. He's going to gain the life off Temple and keep Courser on top. And as I imagine he would do, Courser seems really good against this type of strategy.
It requires some sort of removal spell because a 2/4 can't be attacked through in any other fashion. And, the life gain, of course, matters quite a bit as well.
And we see also 2 ultimate prices waiting in Giurato's hand. One of them will hit the Courser. And he'll swing for 4 again. This time VanMeter drops down to 11. We've seen his hand Abrupt Decay, Dreadbore, and a Courser of Crufix on top of his deck. The pieces seem to be coming together for VanMeter.
Yeah, again, it's just the issue of does he want to take some time off to use removal spells? Because when he casts these Coursers into removal spells, it's letting Seth progress the game and potentially get Chris into a dangerous spot here.
He could go Courser and removal spell this turn, but it would require him to shock for a Blood Crypt, which is maybe a price he doesn't want to pay.
It's possible that Chris is better served by just saying, play a Blood Crypt. Assuming he has 2 copies of Abrupt Decay in hand, he can just go, I'll play Blood Crypt tapped, I'll Abrupt Decay 2 things and block this turn. Just get another mana source into play and don't play into a potential removal spell that Seth can have.
Yeah, I believe he has Decay, Dreadbore, Courser, or at least maybe it's Decay Putrefied Dreadbore Courser.
Yeah. Last turn, Chris got rocked a little bit. That was a rough turn. I mean, he lost his Courser.
So he'll main phase Dreadbore away the Thrill Kill. That's the one creature that could actually swing through Caryatid, so the right choice there.
And now he has a blocker and a removal spell. And this is the turn I alluded to, where Chris just needed a little bit of breathing space to start deploying Courser at a healthier life total. Not really care if it gets hit with a Doomblade. If last turn he plays Courser and it gets tagged by a removal spell, it's really bad for Chris.
Yep, so Giurato with nothing pre-combat, and this will be the play we talked about. VanMeter is going to block the Mogis' Marauder, Abrupt Decay the Cackler, takes 0. Giurato's draw for the turn will help him here, though. He drew a Herald of Torment, so he'll have a way to get over the plant wall. But Chris still at a healthy 11 life, and as we see here, plenty more removal in VanMeter's hand.
And it's a small thing, but I like Chris deciding to kill the Rakdos Cackler there. There is a possibility of something like Whip of Erebos in Seth's deck, and you don't want him to get back the Mogis' Marauder if you can avoid it.
We'll see what Giurato decides to do post-combat, which we're in second main. He does nothing. No Herald of Torment. And VanMeter getting all the weapons here. We see his draw for the turn is Nylea's Disciple. He's a little choked on green mana at the moment.
And that's why I think I just like doing something like playing Nylea's Disciple this turn instead of the Courser, because even if something happens, you don't really care that much. If the Courser just gets killed for no value and you get to tap down your Sylvan Caryatid, there is some danger here. Chris is going to take an even more conservative approach and just do nothing, and I can respect that play as well.
Yeah, remember, he does have 2 instant speed removal spells in his hand, both of which are castable right now. So Giurato will make Tormented Hero and pass the turn. Imagine VanMeter will take care of 1 creature. I'm not sure he'll take care of both.
I think there's some value in just leaving one of the removal spells left over, because the Sylvan Caryatid has one of the 2/2s on lock. And again, there's some outside chance of Whip of Erebos being involved in the game. So if Chris can err on the side of not killing something, I think he will.
Yeah, and he's going to go ahead and use Putrefy as it's the more expensive spell. Abrupt Decay does actually kill everything in the deck. It is just a better Putrefy. Well, unless there's a Whip in Giurato's sideboard, which we know there isn't, but VanMeter doesn't know that. He'll make Elvish Mystic for the turn as opposed to any of the other double green spells. This will let him cast double green in the future while still leaving Sylvan Caryatid up.
Yeah, Chris doing a really good job of balancing, protecting himself while developing his board. He's avoided taking any unnecessary risks by tapping out of blockers to deploy one of his double green creatures. And now with this Elvish Mystic, he's in a really good spot. He's going to be able to gain multiple points of life off the Nylea's Disciple, and more importantly, not care if it just gets killed.
Yeah, second Courser drawn by VanMeter. Giurato made a second Tormented Hero that turn. He still does have Herald of Torment in hand, but no 5th land yet. Courser will hit the play for VanMeter. It does not show land, but does show another Nylea's Disciple. These are going to become a big issue for Giurato. This is 2 Disciples for VanMeter. His Devotion on successive turns will be 6 and 8.
And this is just really good setup here for Chris. Chris is in a spot where he can, in fact, start attacking himself very soon. He's going to be gaining so many incremental points of life here, and the blockers that he has on defense completely invalidate Seth's offense currently.
Yeah, and that was something, we were saying these Sylvan Caryatid, Courser of Krufix decks, this was something that actually happened in block. So before the most recent set, Tormented Hero and Mono Black Aggro was actually very good in block, but the prevalence of Courser, Caryatid decks that really picked up at the PT hurt Mono Black Aggro a lot. Mm-hmm. And I was for this exact reason that we're seeing here. You notice almost all the cards with the exception of Elvish Mystic, are block cards that are in play.
And Chris not even going to do anything about this Herald of Torment just yet.
He's thinking about it. I think he wants to so that he can, well, I mean, it doesn't matter. So he has 3 green sources. He's going to use 2 of them next turn. The 3rd one will still be available to him. So he can wait if he wants to.
The question I have is, if you're Chris, do you want to start attacking next turn? Because
sure,
he can still, he can Abrupt Decay this turn, for example, play Nylea's Disciple. If he finds a land off the Courser, even better, and start threatening Seth's life total.
Yeah, if there's a green land under that Disciple, Chris's next turn is going to be incredible.
you don't want to go, you know, you don't want to play the longest game possible against Mogis' Marauder guy if they have any sort of board.
Right. Next card is Scavenging Ooze, no help there. And we'll see Elvish Mystic. It's gonna tap with the Forest to make an Ilea's Disciple. That will gain 6, putting VanMeter up to 17. Pretty good here, but no good attacks for VanMeter right now because of Herald of Torment.
Yeah, unless he's willing to just fire off the Abrupt Decay preemptively, which it doesn't look like he's willing to do.
And once he's waited this long for Abrupt Decay, he should at least make Giurato lose the life.
Yeah, we've come this far.
Yeah. And there's the swing for 3 in the air. We'll see if he takes it. Yeah, VanMeter will go to 14. What do you suppose he's saving an Abrupt Decay for?
Master the Feast. He can raise a Herald of Torment. That's not a problem.
You can't race a Master of the Feast. Giurato's going to play Thrill Kill Assassin, and he's going to keep it leashed, as it can't, so that it can trade, I guess, with a, so that it can 1-for-1 trade with an Ilea's Disciple would be the idea.
And I think Chris is shifting gears here, and he wants to start to race.
All right, he's going to end step Abrupt Decay the Thrill Kill Assassin. And he certainly has the ability to race. Remember, this next Ilea's Disciple is going to gain 9 right now.
Oh, boy.
And Golgari Charm, as you said, that one's good in this matchup, right?
Yeah, it is really, really good in this matchup.
Oh, that card's so good against Mono Black Aggro.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I've taken my share of lumps. Whenever my opponent taps 2 on Magic Online and there's the pause because they had to choose a mode.
It's like, oh, no.
No.
Oh, no.
Please let it just be Abrupt Decay. Please let it just be Abrupt Decay, and it's just never just Abrupt Decay.
All right, well, it's Ooze into Ilea's Disciple here. Giurato with the trigger on the stack is going to ultimate price the Ooze, but VanMeter still gains a full 8. That's putting him above 20.
Yeah, and now he can really start crashing in.
Yeah, he's going to swing the Disciple. He may swing the Courser as well perfectly. Yeah, he's content. He's fine trading that Courser with 2 Tormented Heroes. Both players know there's another Courser in VanMeter's hand even. Yeah,
and with the Golgari Charm, there's still a target in play with Herald of Torment, even if Seth double blocks, so.
Yeah, Seth takes the 5. And yet there's no good out here for him. The Golgari Charm's either going to get both heroes or the Herald.
It never misses. It never misses.
It's just, wow, it's like, oh, it's like a Bile Blight against this deck.
It either gets all of your garbage or it gets your 1 good card. That's how it plays out.
It even gets Master of the Feast. It just gets everything.
Yeah, it gets everything.
Watch, we're probably going to see VanMeter. With how he's been playing, I bet he doesn't cast the Golgari Charm.
He's going to wait on that.
Yeah. He's going to be like, well, he's going to have the blowout in hand and not even use it because he doesn't need to.
Yeah.
And there we go, a Temple of Abandon. We'll see whether or not he makes the 2nd Courser before making this Temple. I imagine he will.
Yeah, might as well. He still can cast the Golgari Charm at a moment's notice with the Caryatid and his black lands, so.
Yep, 2nd Courser into play there. And that means this Temple gains him 2 more life, up to 17. And Giurato's not even making a dent right now.
No.
And we'll see the top card's Mutavault, whether or not he wants to scry it.
And this has nothing to do with Thoughtseize in this game specifically, because Thoughtseize wasn't cast by Seth. But this is kind of the reason I don't like Thoughtseize in this matchup, is because everything that Chris casts is relevant. You're not cutting a path with any of your cards.
Yeah, every card's a good blocker.
Yeah.
Every card does something.
The worst thing that a card can do is trade with one of your cards. That's its worst thing, so just try to be mana efficient.
What seems to me is that Mono Black is operating on a principle where it's trying to just play more spells than the Monsters deck does.
Right. And then you have Doomblade and Mutavault, where you kind of get your efficiency edge.
Yeah. So it's like once they catch up on efficiency, this matchup seems very difficult.
Yes. When you have to kill them with spells in their hand. There's no way you're beating them pound for pound. That doesn't happen.
So there's a little bit of confusion here in case you're wondering what's going on. Chris played a 2nd Courser and then played a Temple. I think Giurato wanted to Doomblade a Courser, and the question was whether or not he got the Doomblade off before the Courser or before the Temple. It was ruled that it was before the Temple, so Chris still will gain 2, not 1.
Right.
And a conservative, and just a swing by the Disciple again by VanMeter hits Giurato for 3 more.
And Chris can afford to be a little bit on the conservative here because he has the ultimate insurance policy in Golgari Charm.
All right. Yeah, and that was a swing for 3. Last turn's swing was for 5, plus the 1 from Harold. Giurato's now down to 10 and 9 on upkeep. And if it wasn't the Golgari Charm, it would be the Pelucranos here. That Pelucranos equally capable of cleaning up the entire board.
Well, it's not even clear Seth can beat a 3-3 and a 2-4 with no text when the game has gotten to this point. So
yeah, no, he probably can't. Mutavault's activated. Mogus's Marauder, that was the draw for Giurato. That's what he's been sculpting his game toward, but the numbers don't add up. This is only a swing for 11.
Yeah. Not a shabby draw, but with Golgari Charm in Chris's hand, he just has this covered.
It was really, and this is interesting, so were it not for the pair of Nylea's Disciples, this would work. This would be, the second Nylea's Disciple gained 8. This play puts Chris down to 6.
That's what I alluded to about you have to be really careful against mono black aggro if the board ever develops, because Mogus's Marauder can steal games that feel like a lock for you.
All right, yes, we see here, gives everything Intimidate, but not going to be enough. It looks like the next attack will be lethal on VanMeter's side.
Yeah, I think Chris is just contemplating how he wants to use this Golgari Charm, if at all.
Yeah.
The thing is, he can't really break up the devotion trigger from Mogus's Marauder, because even if he Golgari Charms away the 2 Tormented Heroes, there's still 3 black mana symbols, so he can target the Marauder and the Mutavault.
He's going to go ahead and blow up Herald of Torment. Sure. Giurato's, oh yeah, there's that other ability on it as well. It can blow up an enchantment. It does everything.
It does.
And a swing for 8 puts VanMeter down to 9 with no blockers left. VanMeter doesn't have enough power to win right now. He has 6 power. Imagine we'll just see him play it very conservatively.
Yeah, I mean, he can attack for 5 and leave Pelucranos on defense with the ability to monstrous and fight for 1, which is a lot of insurance here.
That's actually enough insurance to buy him like a top decked Mogus's Marauder. It gets him around that. It could for 1 fight Tormented Hero. There would only be 8 on Giurato's side. Still not enough. So because of that, I don't think there is a top deck for Giurato. And Thoughtseize won't do it.
I think that might have been Gnarled Scarhide, but
okay.
that will also not do it.
That will also not do it. And we'll look here, and I don't think he's going to be able to win next turn, or survive next turn. And this should be game and match for Chris VanMeter, moving to 6-0.
Yeah, there might be chump blocks to get Seth through this turn, but there's no attacks he has afforded to him. If he attacks, he deals 0 points of damage.
As we see here, this is Mono Black Aggro, one of the decks on the fringe of the format. I like the power it's shown here in this match. It does seem difficult though, and basically any 1-drop, 2-drop aggro deck can struggle with a deck that revolves around playing 1, 2, 3, and 4 mana green creatures and removal spells. Seems to me like that can be tough, and we've seen some of that here.
Yeah, it is challenging. It's the reason that I like just 4 copies of Mogus's Marauder in the main deck, because you just need to cheat. There's a bunch of board states where you just need to cheat what's going on. You can't fight pound for pound. There's only so much removal you can really add to the deck before your Esper blue-white matchups become really bad. And so you can have this post-board game plan of, I'm going to have some Doom Blades and some Ultimate Prices and maybe fight them a little bit on even footing while attacking them and stuff like that. But early on, you just need access to Mogus's Marauder, because the game too often gets to something like this where nothing else you can do really matters. So it is Gnarled Scarhide, which is the reason that Seth is giving some pause here.
You see here, it was Gnarled Scarhide. He's going to bestow it on the Tormented Hero.
So that is a drain for 1 as Seth remembers the trigger. And Chris might be willing to say, that's fine, don't even bother responding, because that's 1 less blocker that Seth has on the way back.
Right, Gnarled Scarhide makes it so a creature can't block. Chris can go ahead and have Pelucranos fight the Tormented Hero, And then his swing should be lethal. It should be for 5. Let me just do it on his turn 2. Yeah, he has Putrefy, Monstrous for 1. This is very lethal. Yep, Shocks for it, goes down to 7. And that'll be it. As we see a tappings. Oh, he's going to go for the flashier one. He's going to Monstrous for 3, killing both of Giurato's blockers. And then swing for the lethal.
And there it is.
All right. So Chris VanMeter up to 6-0. If he can win the next 2, he'll be in the top 8. If he can win 3 of the next 4, he'll be in.
Yep. And for Seth, still in top 8 contention, 5-1, still an excellent start with